This is True News, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. I'm Rick Wiles. The Biden White House claims that Russia is planning a false flag operation to justify a military invasion of Ukraine. The accusation was made by U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price, who said Russia is scheming to release a video of a fake attack that will be used to blame Ukraine. An Associated Press reporter, however, challenged Mr. Price to produce the evidence of the fake video. But the State Department spokesman simply talked around the reporter's challenge. Doc Burkhart has more on this story.
Yes, so yesterday was quite the interchange at the State Department as the AP reporter was questioning State Department spokesperson Ned Price. This isn't their first encounter, by the way, their first kind of tit for tat that they've had within the past week, actually. But on this particular occasion, the subject of the Russian false flag narrative that's been floating around for several days now, that the Biden administration has been pushing, and that's been kind of rolling out in the media and everything. Well, someone finally had the nerve to ask one very simple question, Rick. Basically, remember the old Wendy's commercial? Where's the beef?
Yeah, where's the evidence?
Yeah, where's the evidence at?
And Mr. Price said, I just gave it to you.
Right.
And the reporter said, no, you told us you have evidence. That's the evidence.
My word is my evidence, I guess.
Yes, that's what he wanted the reporter to believe.
It is quite the interesting interchange. New York Post here has the article about it. And Ned Price started with reporters on Thursday and being grilled, but not really reporter, being grilled for not presenting sufficient evidence for Russia's false flag plans.
It was ironic, Doc. The reporter accused Mr. Price of the State Department of talking like Alex Jones. He says, you've entered the Alex Jones territory. You're talking about crisis actors and false flags. The point I'm making is, this has finally reached the level of mainstream, so-called mainstream establishment reporters, like the Associated Press, where they are starting to question and doubt the propaganda given to them from government officials.
Right.
I mean, you were here. We went through the Syrian war, where the U.S. would accuse Russia or accuse Syria of gassing their own people.
Their own people.
And the Russians and the Syrians kept saying, the U.S. government is making fake videos of these attacks. There's no such gas attacks on the people.
Yeah, you remember the videos of the people that are spraying
with
kids off
hose.
with garden hoses and everything. Of course, they have no protective gear on or anything like that.
That's right.
And then the white helmets would come in and help out with, different things.
But the reporters never questioned it. It was only places like True News that would question the story. So it's refreshing to see that finally an establishment news reporter at the Associated Press is questioning the propaganda. Right. We're making progress. It's slow, but we're making progress. It's becoming more difficult for the establishment to peddle their lies and false narratives and propaganda to fool the people to justify the agenda that they want to carry out.
Yeah, we're going to share a video here with you of the interchange between State Department spokesperson Ned Price and the AP reporter. I have to hand it to Ned Price. He stuck to his propaganda guns. He did not veer off course at all.
That's what he's paid to do, dog. He gets his paycheck.
But neither did the AP reporter. The AP reporter constantly pressed, where's the evidence? And so we've been asking that very same question. Where's the evidence for anything that's going on in Ukraine? So we're going to share that video clip. It's a little bit longer than we usually show, but walk through it because you have to get a full understanding of the whole interchange here to get the complete picture. Watch this.
Thanks. Okay, well, that's quite a mouthful there. So you said actions such as these suggest otherwise. Suggest meaning that they suggest they're not interested in talks and they're going to go ahead with some kind of what action are you talking about?
One, the actions I've just pointed to. The fact that Russia continues to engage in disinformation campaigns.
You made an allegation that they might do that. Have they actually done it?
What we know, Matt, is what I have just said, that they have engaged in this activity, in this planning activity. But let me because obviously this is not the first time we've made these reports public. You'll remember that just a few weeks ago.
I'm sorry, made what report public?
If you'll let me finish, I will tell you what report we made public. We told you a few weeks ago that we have information indicating Russia also has already prepositioned a group of operatives to conduct a false flag operation in eastern Ukraine. So that, Matt, to your question, is an action that Russia has already taken.
It's an action that you say that they have taken, but you have shown no evidence to confirm that. And I'm going to get to the next question here, which is, what is the evidence that they... I mean, this is like crisis actors, really? This is like Alex Jones territory you're getting into now. What evidence do you have to support the idea that there is some propaganda film in the making?
Matt, this is derived from information known to the U.S. government, intelligence information that we have declassified. I think you know...
Okay, well, where is it? Where is this information?
It is intelligence information that we have declassified.
Well, where is it? Where's the declassified information?
I just delivered it.
No, you made a series of allegations and statements.
Would you like us to print out the topper? Because you will see a transcript of this briefing that you can print out for yourself.
That's not evidence, Ned. That's you saying it. That's not evidence. I'm sorry.
What would you like, Matt?
I would like to see some proof that you can show that
Matt, you have been
that shows that the Russians are doing this. Ned, I've been doing this for a long time.
I know, that was my point. You have been doing this for quite a while. You know that when we declassify intelligence information,
right. And I
we do so in a means. We do so with an eye to protecting sources and methods.
Is not going to fall. I remember a lot of things. So where is the declassified information other than you coming out here and saying?
Matt, I'm sorry you don't like the format, but we have declassified.
It's not the format; it's the content.
I'm sorry you don't like the content. I'm sorry you are doubting the information that is in the possession of the U.S. government.
No,
what I'm telling you is that this is information that's available to us. We are making it available to you in order for a couple reasons. One is to attempt to deter the Russians from going ahead with this activity. Two, in the event we're not able to do that, in the event the Russians do go ahead with this, to make it clear as day, to lay bare the fact that this has always been an attempt on the part of the Russian Federation to fabricate a pretext.
Yeah, but you don't have any evidence to back it up other than what you're saying. It's like you're saying, we think we have information the Russians may do this, but you won't tell us what the information is. And then when you're asked...
That is the idea behind deterrence, Matt. That is the idea behind deterrence. It is our hope that the Russians don't go forward with this.
Is, you say, I just gave it to you. But that's not what...
You seem not to understand. You seem not to understand the idea of deterrence. We are trying to deter the Russians from moving forward with this type of activity. That is why we're making it public today. If the Russians don't go forward with this, that is not... ipso facto, an indication that they never had plans to do so.
But then it's unprovable. I mean, my God, what is the evidence that you have that suggests that the Russians are even planning this?
Matt,
I'm not saying that they're not, but you just come out and say this and expect us just to believe it without you showing a shred of evidence that it's actually true. Other than when I ask, or when anyone else asked, what's the information? You said, well, I just gave it to you, which was just you making a statement.
Matt, you said yourself, you've been in this business for quite a long time. You know that when we make information, intelligence information public, we do so in a way that protects sensitive sources and methods. You also know that we declassify information only when we're confident in that information. If you doubt the credibility of the U.S. government, of the British government, of other governments, and want to find solace in information that the Russians are putting out, that is for you to do.
I'm not asking what the Russian government is putting out, and what is it supposed to mean?
So
they're still lying. They never stop lying.
So what's the evidence, Rick?
I just gave it to you, Doc.
What I said. That's the evidence. So
what is declassified?
So basically they can come out and say Russia is planning a crisis act or false flag event in Ukraine using Iraqi WMDs to sink the Lusitania in the Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, what's your evidence? Oh, I just gave it to you.
That's right. It's so ridiculous. But finally, people are questioning it because the reporter brought up the Iraq War.
Right.
Well, a lot of the reporters went along with everything Bush and Cheney and Colin Powell told them, and
Absolutely.
Tony Blair. And what did we get? A lot of death and destruction. And Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. They used propaganda and lies and deceit to start a war. It was a Zionist war. Bush was surrounded by neocons. The neocons were Zionists. And they used that kind of propaganda back in 2000, right after 9/11, 2001,
Right.
2, and 3, to justify the invasion of Iraq. But people are wiser now. You know, those of us who have been doing this kind of work for 20-some years, we've been knocking heads with these propagandas for decades, and we're wearing them down. More people are starting to question what they say and doubting that their stories are believable. And all the reporter was simply saying is, you say Russia's going to do this, where's the evidence? Now, I actually thought Ned Price was going to say, well, it's classified, I can't show it to you.
But he said it was
He said it was
declassified.
declassified. Well, if it's declassified, that means you can lay it out on the table. There it is.
But I think he went to say only my statement about it is declassified.
Right. Well, show us a clip from the video. Let us see a trailer.
I think
Let's see the false flag trailer.
I've watched this about 4 or 5 times, and I think that he actually confessed to what the purpose of this whole statement was. He said that basically he said it was for deterrence.
Yes.
And he said that several times. Now, he didn't make the direct connection that saying, we said this to create deterrence. But he said, listen, you know, Matt, you've done this for a long time. You know how this works.
You know how this business works.
Right. And so...
Well, what business are we in?
We're in the propaganda business, you know, or he is. And so, but anyway, I thought it was interesting. I actually think he confessed to what the whole purpose it was. It wasn't to prove anything. It was to prevent something, or at least to give the appearance that they were preventing something.
Right.
So,
Well, Doc, the Olympics opened today in Beijing, and Vladimir Putin was there for the opening ceremony. But he also met with Xi Jinping, and this is not a good sign for the West because Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin basically shook hands and said, we're united against the United States and NATO.
yes.
We got a story here. This is from Interfax in Russia. Beijing backs. Now look at this. China supports Russian proposals on security guarantees in Europe. This is a significant development today.
Right. So the article goes on to say that China supports the initiatives, on security guarantees in Europe. The Chinese side treats with understanding and supports the proposals put forward by the Russian Federation on the formation of a long-term legally binding security guarantee in Europe, the joint statement of the Russian Federation and China on international relations adopted at the Beijing summit. And so the text of the document is actually published on the Kremlin website. And it says that Russia and China called on the United States to abandon the deployment of ground-based intermediate and shorter-range missiles in the Asia-Pacific region and Europe. So now they're broadening this, Rick. So the parties also believe that the U.S. withdrawal from the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, accelerating the research and development of land-based intermediate-range and shorter-range missiles, and the desire to deploy them in the Asia-Pacific and European regions, as well as transferring them to its allies, entail an increase in tension and mistrust, increased risk for international and regional security, lead to a weakening of the international system of non-proliferation and arms control, undermine global strategic stability. And Russia and China are concerned about the creation of a new defense alliance of the United States, Great Britain, and Australia, the AUKUS, and call on the participants to faithfully fulfill their obligations on nuclear and missile non-proliferation. And so they are putting the stand up on the wall that the NATO allies have been creating, and then the secondary alliance that has been created as well.
Yeah.
So
what happened here, Doc, is two things. China formally, publicly, threw its weight behind Russia in the dispute between Russia and NATO. China went on record today saying, we fully back Russia. On what? Russia's demands that NATO weapons be withdrawn from Eastern Europe. That's the demand. China said today, we fully back Russia in their proposals. Their proposals means all NATO weapons have to be removed from the Russian border.
But added to that now,
number two
is the Asia Pacific region.
So they said, now that we're thinking about it, now that we're on the subject, we want American missiles and weapons and troops removed from Asia.
Yes.
And Russia said, that's a good idea. We back you on that too. So we just watched today the emergence of the Russian-Chinese military bloc.
And it didn't have to be that way, did it?
It did not have to happen. Russia wanted to. 20 years ago, Russia was reaching out to the United States, actually wanting to be a member of NATO. And the only thing the United States and NATO nations did was kick dirt in Russia's face.
Because they needed an enemy.
They needed an enemy to keep their nice war machine going. And what we did is that we drove Russia today into the arms of Xi Jinping. Things changed today. And I really want to get this across to our audience. It changed today. There's a formal alliance today of Russia and China to remove American and NATO weapons from Eastern Europe and Asia.
And when we say Asia, we're talking South Korea, we're talking Japan, we're talking Taiwan, we're talking Philippines, we're talking the entire region.
Well, they would include Australia.
That's true, they would. And so, but, you know, and they have a point. I mean, let's face it, it's kind of the same situation in especially the northern Asian Pacific region as it is in Eastern Europe. There's about the reason why we have the missiles and the personnel and everything in Korea, Japan, and Taiwan is to balance out against the Chinese.
Yeah.
That's the reason why. We just won't come out and say it. We're doing the same thing in Eastern Europe. Significant change today, isn't it, Rick?
It is. Doc, the West is led by men and women who, their foreign policy over the past, I'm talking about the ruling class of the West, their foreign policy has been a disaster. Nothing that they've done has worked. Nothing.
Unless their goal was chaos.
Yes, and to enrich themselves because they got rich with all their wars. But for everybody else other than them, their foreign policy has been a horrendous failure. It's not been good for the world. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a president of the United States who said, I'm going to negotiate a 100-year global peace treaty. 100-year, a century global peace treaty, and I'm going to get all the main nations of the world together, and we're going to lay out on the table all the things that we're upset about and all the things that we want, the positives and the negatives. And we're going to sort through all this, and we're going to make sacrifices. Each nation's going to give up something in order to get something. But at the end of this, we're going to have an agreement between the United States, Europe, Russia, China, Japan. We're going to have an agreement that will guarantee world peace for 100 years. Wouldn't that be good? I don't think that's impossible.
I don't think anyone's ever called for peace, have they? Has anyone? Not at least not since the 60s when the hippies were crying out for it on the streets. And so,
Why hasn't somebody tried it? Why hasn't somebody said, let's try to negotiate a 100-year peace treaty? What if you only ended up with a 50-year peace treaty? And the world had peace for 50 years. What if all the big nations agreed, okay, these are the areas that we're fighting over, we're going to solve them. And nobody's going to be really happy because major sacrifices will have to be met.
But if we're equally miserable, maybe we can have peace.
Yes. And you get it in writing, and everybody agrees you're not going to fight over that topic or this nation, this border. And we've settled all the major disputes. But see, where are the disputes? Okay, so you have Taiwan. China wants Taiwan. Would we give up Taiwan? Would we give up Taiwan in return for
100 years of peace?
100 years of peace. Okay. How about the Middle East? Would the United States agree to force the Zionists into withdrawing to the 1967 boundaries of Israel, so that the Palestinians could have their homeland? Would the Israeli Zionists vacate the land that they stole?
For 100 years
For
of peace. 100
100 years. See, this is not going to be easy. Each side's going to have to give up something. But you take all of the hot spots and you come up with an agreement. And you say, for the next 100 years, several generations of children are going to grow up and never know war. And we're going to take all the money that we're spending on war and we're going to use it to increase the quality of life for 7 billion people on the planet. Didn't that sound like a good plan?
Right. I mean, but no one's calling for peace, Rick. No one is. There's not a world leader that's calling for peace right now.
I know.
Not a single one. I mean, just $20 billion. If you just had $20 billion, you could provide clean drinking water for every single person on the planet. All you need is $20 billion to do it. You could have clean drinking water for every single living soul on the planet.
We'll spend that much on an aircraft carrier.
Right.
The money that is wasted on war it really is a sin. How much the human race spends on weapons to kill other humans.
And think of all the Christians, Muslims, and Jews, like in the Middle East, that are suffering and that are going through tremendous trials and everything, Rick. There'd actually be money to be able to help reestablish their communities. And maybe instead of everybody shooting each other and throwing rocks at each other, that maybe they can start working together and start building communities, raising families, building schools, and doing all those things.
So if I ran for president in 2024 on a 100-year peace plan, would anybody back it? Or would people say, that's impossible. We have to have war.
And that's the alternative, isn't it?
It is. That's your alternative.
If you're against the 100-year peace plan, what are you for?
War. You're for war. And there are powerful people who are for war. It's a very lucrative industry to be in. There's no business like war business. Well, while Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are schmoozing today in Beijing, warming up to each other and talking about how to take down the United States, let's turn to our fearless leader, Joe Biden, and let him inspire us with confidence in how he will lead us to safety as Russia and China form a military alliance. Let's watch this video.
My grandmother would yell, no jokes, ready. Don't spread the faith, guys. We can do it.
He had to be led away by his hand, being held by his wife to get him out of the room.
Yes. This man is not leading our country, is he?
No, his wife is leading him.
It's sad. I mean, that's very, very sad.
And they watched that video in Beijing.
And in Moscow.
Yes. But Beijing got him in the White House. You got to remember that part. Beijing got Biden in the White House for the takedown. We've been set up as a country. Set up for the downfall. Hey, was it yesterday I mentioned, I said, you know, over the 20-some years of doing True News, I've noticed that whenever there's going to be a shortage, or when the powers to be want prices to go up, things start blowing up.
Yes.
Refineries blow up, pipelines blow up, fertilizer plants blow up, all kinds of stuff. Well, look at what happened today.
So this is an oil tanker capable of carrying 2 million barrels, explodes off the coast of Nigeria, because tankers explode all the time.
Doc, this is not just a tanker. This is a floating refinery.
That's right. So an oil production ship capable of carrying up to 2 million barrels of oil has exploded off the coast of Nigeria. According to local reports, the Trinity Spirit exploded at the Ukpokiti oil field off Nigeria's coast near the Escravos terminal close to the river Niger Delta. Dramatic video shows the ship on fire with thick black smoke rising into the sky as it appears to be sinking. The vessel is an FPSO, a floating production storage and offloading unit owned by Sheba Exploration and Production Company. These types of ships are used by the offshore oil and gas industry for the production and processing and storage of oil and serve a similar function to larger oil rigs. So it's a combination oil rig, storage facility, and processing.
And a refinery.
So,
but it's at the bottom of the sea. Just blew up. At the same time, energy prices are soaring.
yes, and I'm sure people have noticed the price hikes at the gas pump, especially in the past week. Right now, oil's a little bit over $90 a barrel as it stands right now. Stories like this, watch for the stories over the next several days. If you see several stories along the same line, you know that there's a plan in place in order to get oil probably back up in the 130s, 140s here pretty soon.
Which is devastating to the economy, because when the price of oil, which then includes heating, fuel, gasoline, and so forth, when energy costs get up into the $90, $100 range, there is an immediate negative impact on the economy. Companies stop expanding. They start reducing expenditures. People stop traveling. The economy starts to constrict. So for the energy industry, rising prices are wonderful. For the rest of the economy, it's really bad.
Right.
All right. There's a happy medium that when prices of oil stay at a particular price range, the oil industry is making money, but the economy is moving and growing.
And there's a psychological effect to it too,
Yes.
isn't there? There's something that happens when gas goes from $2.99 to $3.01. Suddenly, it's a whole different mindset about, whoa, suddenly gas is a lot more expensive. Well,
Do you start thinking, I'm not going to drive as much?
right?
I do. I'm just going to park. I'm just not going to be as free about going out and riding around because I got to fill the tank up again.
Now, we haven't seen prices like this since 2014. I remember coming to Vero for the very first time and seeing Travel America down here. Gas at that time, that day when I came into town, was $3.75 that day. And I was like, oh my goodness, what happened to gas prices while I was in Korea and the Philippines?
They're slowing the economy down.
Right.
Okay, they're deliberately slowing the economy down. This is a deliberate action. Right? They want to slow it down because of the inflation that's taking place. They're giving us inflation in energy prices to deflate other prices by forcing people they'll be driven to do less.
Right, they'll constrict.
They'll constrict.
Yes.
So,
and that'll cause prices to at least stabilize. It probably won't fall much, but at least they'll stabilize, and then people will be acclimated to the new prices, and then the whole cycle starts up again, right?
it all comes down that there are banksters manipulating the markets.
Yes.
And while
absolutely.
we're on the topic of banksters manipulating markets and warmongers who work for banksters, Norway officially chose their new central bank governor, and it is none other than Jens Stoltenberg, the head of NATO.
Hey, his promotion came through.
He did.
Congratulations.
He got his retirement plan. He ran NATO, got those wars going, and now he sits back at the central bank and can coast towards retirement.
So if I had simply submitted my resume for the central bank president of Norway, and I had on there former, director of NATO, a military alliance,
Yes.
we blow up things for a living.
Yes. You looking for a banker or a warmonger?
Yes, that's what you're looking for.
Before-
What's the difference?
But if you're searching for a particular candidate for a job, wouldn't you want somebody with banking experience? If you're hiring the governor of a central bank of a nation,
Right.
wouldn't you hire a banker? Why would you hire a warmonger? And we all know the answer to this because
They're one and the same.
it's the same. It's the same group. Okay, I'll let you do this next one, Doc.
Sure.
This is Speaker Pelosi.
Well, of course, the Olympics started and everything, the 2022 Olympics, and NBC has started their propaganda coverage of everything going on in Beijing and stuff. And so our athletes are there. But Nancy Pelosi has encouraged our Olympians to kind of hold back on that. Any expression of dissent against the CCP. Here's a little statement that we caught of her earlier today.
As I wish the athletes well, I do not encourage them to speak out against the Chinese government there because I fear for their safety if they do.
Really?
Why? Because
What?
I fear for their safety?
China would hurt our athletes?
Well, why are we sending them then? I mean,
so
if they could
China
hurt
can
our...
collect their DNA.
So I think I have a more appropriate video clip here. Watch this, Rick.
As I wish the athletes well, I do not encourage them to speak out against the Chinese government there because I fear for their safety if they do.
That was Xi Pelosi speaking there about the situation. So,
Okay, let's take a break. We got a message from Heaven's Harvest. We'll be back with some COVID crazy news. You're watching True News.
If this pandemic has taught us anything, being prepared is everything. Heaven's Harvest survival food is not only delicious, it has a 25-year shelf life. Packaged in state-of-the-art sealed Mylar bags, then sealed in grab-and-go food-grade buckets, Heaven's Harvest survival food is second to none. Whether you want to be prepared for 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year, our survival food kits have everything you need. Don't delay. Call or visit heavensharvest.com. Order yours today.
In France, opponents of the vaccine mandates and the vaccine passports and the gene therapy experiments gathered around the headquarters of Pfizer Corporation. And they were chanting a message for the people inside Pfizer's building to hear. And they called them assassins.
man, the tone in France is changing fast, isn't it, Rick?
Yes. Doc, this is why the globalists are backing down right now. This is why they're calling a timeout. What was the term that we said that they were using yesterday? They're taking a break. They're
ceasefire.
Ceasefire.
Yeah.
They're calling a ceasefire.
A COVID ceasefire.
A COVID ceasefire. Yes, it's because they see the peasants are starting to pick up their pitchforks and they're calling the ruling elite assassins. And when the public stands in a street and shouts assassins at somebody in the building, you're getting very close to, well, you could have a French Revolution.
Yes. Yeah,
they've had them there
one.
before.
Yes, they've had several. And so we have a video clip of the French citizens that are finally getting fed up of all the nonsense around the gene therapy injections. Here they are in front of Pfizer headquarters in France. I hope Andrew Borla was shaking at his window looking out over the crowd today, hearing what was going on in the streets of Paris today. Watch this.
Pfizer! Pfizer, le responsable de tout ce marasme, de toute cette crise. Et l'oligarchie! On est ici, en citoyen unis. On est ici en citoyens unis pour dénoncer cette mafia qui orchestre de mettre à terre nos libertés fondamentales.
Now, I don't speak French that well. I can read it, but I don't speak it that well. But you can tell by the tone of their voice they are not very happy, and they should demand Andrew Borla for his check for $1 million that he got from Israel here not too long ago, and to compensate. And so,
well, he should donate it to the families of people who had relatives that died of heart attacks or strokes from the Pfizer vaccine.
Right.
Why do they get corpses and he gets $1 million from Israel?
Because he did his job. That's why. That's exactly why.
Well, let's go to Canada and check up with what's going on with the Freedom Convoy. The Ottawa Citizen newspaper says Ottawa police expecting more trucks and protesters and counter-protesters over the weekend. That man is the police chief of Ottawa, and
Mr. Slowly.
Yes. And he was getting irritated today. He's starting to show his frustration with the truckers, and if he carries through with his threats today, we may see police action this weekend against the truckers.
So let's see what he had to say. He had a lengthy statement and then took questions from reporters, but let's listen to what the plan is for Ottawa, because they're expecting a lot more trucks to be coming into the Canadian capital this weekend, and he has a game plan for how to respond. Watch this.
Ottawa residents are frustrated and they are angry, and they have every right to be. Their lives continue to be severely impacted by unlawful and unsafe events on the city streets, in the downtown core, and in the surrounding neighborhoods. This is unacceptable. This morning, we have begun implementing a new surge and contain strategy in our downtown core based on lessons learned over the last operating cycle of the demonstrations and new intelligence gathered literally in the last 24 hours. There are 3 parts to this new strategy. Number 1, we're deploying a surge of police officers in the downtown and the immediate neighborhoods. There will be approximately 150 additional officers dedicated to only patrolling and addressing unlawful, threatening conduct in the most impacted neighborhoods, specifically Centertown, Lower Town, and the Byward Market. The second part of the strategy will be an expansion of the hardening of the perimeter in the demonstration red zone, the immediate area of Wellington Street in front of the Parliament buildings. We will be further isolating and containing the demonstration in that red zone. The Ottawa Police Service, the City of Ottawa, and our partners will be utilizing concrete barriers, heavy equipment barricades to create no-access roadways throughout the downtown core. This includes considerations around the closing of bridges, highway off-ramps, and other roadways. Incoming protester vehicles today and throughout the weekend will be directed to designated parking zones outside of the downtown core. The third part of the strategy, enhanced intelligence and investigation operations. We now have secured fully national, provincial, and local intelligence agencies. We have increased ability to identify and target protesters and supporters of protesters who are funding and enabling unlawful and harmful activity by the protesters themselves. Investigative evidence gathering teams are collecting financial, digital, vehicle registration, driver identification, insurance status, and other related evidence that will be used in prosecutions. The primary focus of each of these measures will be on the unlawful behavior connected to the ongoing demonstrations. This includes parallel and counter demonstrations. We strongly urge all demonstrators and those engaging with the demonstrators to act lawfully, peacefully, and respectfully. The hatred, the violence, the illegal acts that Ottawa residences and businesses have endured over the last week is unacceptable in any circumstance. The Ottawa Police Service and the City of Ottawa are bringing significantly greater resources to restore order, hold offenders to account, and protect our neighborhoods. In closing, I want to reiterate what Ottawa residents have endured, what Ottawa businesses have endured, what our own service members and our partners have endured over the last week is unacceptable. And we have learned from our experience. We have gathered new evidence. We have secured new allies, and we're implementing new measures to bring this demonstration to an end.
Well, I would say that what the Canadian people have endured for over a year from the Trudeau government is unacceptable.
I agree.
They locked down the country. They disrupted their lives. They
Closed the churches.
Not only closed the churches, but seized church properties, jailed pastors, destroyed businesses, locked up business owners. He doesn't seem to be bothered by that at all.
No.
Because he's a needle Nazi. So
they didn't start caring about businesses until the truckers showed up.
That's right.
In Ottawa.
You can be certain, Doc, that Police Chief Slowly received a phone call from Fidel Trudeau, who was yelling at him and saying, "You have to do something.
Right.
You have to do something. Get me out of this mess. I'm hiding. You have to go in there and make these people go home." Because suddenly he's changed his tone now. He's going to do something this weekend.
Because the Canadian Armed Forces today in the National Post said, we're not getting involved. Okay. And the last time there was a military intervention against Canadians by Canadians was by guess who?
Who?
Pierre Trudeau in 1970.
Really?
Yes. And so that was then. But notice here how they're so concerned now. But think of the tone. Let's take it back a year ago when you had the BLM riots and the Antifa riots. The tone of the police wasn't to, protect the city, but to protect the protesters.
Yes, the rioters. Protect the rioters.
Why aren't they protecting these protesters now? Because they are not on their agenda.
That's right.
And so
they're going after the people who are donating money to support the Freedom Convoy.
Donating money, food, gasoline, lodging.
They're going to prosecute them.
Yes. And he goes even further because he makes a statement later on as he takes questions from reporters. Because there's lots of videos coming out, Rick, where you have truckers and the people that are in Ottawa right now talking to police, chatting with police. Police have been extremely kind, nice, friendly, and everything. Well, we certainly can't have that now, can we?
No, has Mr. Slowly threatened his police officers?
He did exactly that today, Rick, following in taking the questions and answers in this very press conference, where he said he will prosecute police officers that help the Freedom Convoy in any way. Listen to this.
There is no facilitation of food, water, fuel, logistics, or funding by any member of this police service or any other police service that I am aware of. Let me repeat. There is no supply of food, water, fuel, logistics, or anything else that relates to enabling this demonstration by any member of the Ottawa Police Service or any other police service that I am aware of. Should that information come to me, you can be clear, as Chief of Police in this service, I will conduct a full investigation. I will use the full extent of the Police Service Act and, if relevant, the Criminal Code to pursue charges against such a member who would do that.
So if a police officer helps a trucker, this guy slowly is going to prosecute him. That's what he just said.
That's exactly right, Rick. So that's what it's come to.
Well, they're showing their face. See, their mask has come off. When they made everybody put on a mask, they took off their mask.
Yeah, that's a great observation there.
And now we see them for what they are. Tyrants. Globalist tyrants. I've been getting a lot of emails from Canadians, and I've been reading them. Susan's sending them over to me, and the Canadians are educating me about the Canadian people. And Doc, basically, what I'm hearing, and it's very much like the United States, you have your far left concentrations of people along the coast, here in the United States, along the East Coast and the West Coast. In Canada, it's the eastern coast, the eastern side of Canada that's leftist. The rest of Canada is very conservative.
Right.
But the left has been goading and prodding and irritating and insulting and provoking the conservative Canada for years, just like the left is doing it to mid-America. We've got the leftists in New York and in California who are, look at the way they treat West Virginia. Look at the way they talk to people in the Midwest, in the farm areas, how they talk about the South.
The flyover country.
The South. They look with disdain upon anybody who does not live in Beverly Hills or Los Angeles or Manhattan, and they have this disdain. Well, the same thing's happening in Canada. And the Canadian conservatives are just tired of it. That's what I'm hearing, that's what I'm reading in emails. They've reached the point where they're not going to take it anymore. And I think little Fidel Trudeau is becoming very nervous. Is he still hiding? Has he come out?
I haven't seen him come out of his spider hole all week. So
he's afraid, and the people are standing up. And he could end this. He could end it overnight.
Right.
He could just say, you know what? We're going to rescind. I've heard the voices of the people. We're going to rescind the mandate. Come on, guys, get back to work. Start driving those trucks, and all would be well tomorrow.
Right.
But he's going to try to knock heads this weekend.
Yeah, and all Fidel Jr. would have to say is, if you want to wear a mask, if you want to get a gene therapy injection, you can. We're not going to require it. Just let's go about and build in Canada.
Right.
That's all he would have to say. And the truckers would leave. In fact, Tamara Like, she's one of the key organizers of the trucker convoy up in Canada. She said basically the same thing in a press conference earlier today. She also went into detail, Rick, about what's happening with the GoFundMe money as well. And so we have a soundbite from her today. This is Tamara Like. She's one of the key Freedom Convoy organizers in Canada and had a statement today.
We are here out of love for our families, our communities, and our nation. These past 2 years, the COVID mandates have divided us. This protest began because of the federal government's restrictions on trucker freedoms. Our movement has grown in Canada and across the world because common people are tired of the mandates and restrictions in their lives that now seem to be doing more harm than good. As of today, Sweden, Denmark, UK, Norway, Finland, Ireland, and Switzerland have removed all COVID mandates and restrictions. We are therefore calling on all levels of government in Canada to end all COVID mandates and restrictions. We will continue our protest until we see a clear plan for their elimination. Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan has taken leadership in Canada in ending restrictions and mandates in that province. Hopefully, these words will turn into long-lasting action. So far, no one from the federal, provincial, or municipal government has spoken directly with us. Instead, they are using you, the media, to portray us as racists, misogynists, and even terrorists. As a woman with Métis heritage, a mother and a grandmother, I am offended. The reality is that members of this freedom movement are average, peace-loving, and law-abiding citizens from all walks of life who are fed up with being disrespected and bullied by our government. Let me assure the people of Ottawa that we have no intent to stay one day longer than necessary. Our departure will be based on the Prime Minister doing what is right, ending all mandates and restrictions on our freedoms. We also want to thank the thousands of people who have so generously donated to this protest to GoFundMe. Over the last 3 days, our accountants and lawyers have been working hard to deal with the legal details. This morning, our lawyers sent GoFundMe all the details that they have asked for. I am confident that GoFundMe now has all the information needed to immediately lift the suspension they put on our campaign. I am hoping to hear from GoFundMe soon so that we can get the money to the truckers and keep our protest for freedom moving forward.
She's not going to get the $10 million from GoFundMe because the police chief just said, we're going to prosecute anybody who gave money.
Yes.
They're treating donations
like terrorists.
Like it's financing terrorism.
You're exactly right. Yes.
That's where Canada's at right now. If you donate to a political cause, you are supporting domestic terrorism?
Yes. Now,
but they're doing it in the United States.
Right.
They're treating parents that go to school board meetings as domestic terrorists.
Now, most Canadians, good-natured folks and very relaxed. Canadians generally are very laid back and everything. It's almost a caricature at times. One of the catchphrases some people make fun of Canadians because they say sorry a lot. Okay, cop pops up in media and comedy and stuff like that. Well, there's coming a point in time now, and we'll see in this clip here from Breitbart, that they're tired of saying sorry. That finally they've come to a breaking point. And folks, I'm kind of scared. What will happen when you get Canadians really mad here? What's going to happen? Here's a video clip. This is Breitbart talking to ordinary Canadian supporting truckers who now are supporting terrorism, basically, in Ottawa.
According to the news media.
Yes, according to the media. Watch this.
You guys have this sort of little temporary stand here where we're giving out what looks like coffee, some food. Just tell me a bit about that.
Well, me and my friend, we figured coast to coast, right? Not everybody knows how cold Ottawa can get because, the prairies and out in west and stuff like that, around the Atlantic as well, it's warmer weather. So we figured at -20, if we want to stick around, we planned on the tent and we planned on hot drinks. That's what we initially figured it would be a good idea to bring around because if we want people to stay longer, we got to make people feel warmer. So this is what it started like. And a day in, day out, and then people started to bring us food. Everything that is food here is donations from people that cooked at home or prepared it at home or figured it'd be a good idea. They go and they give some to us, but there's a few other stands along the way, along the paths and stuff like that. So everything that's food is just donations and for community brought in, brought out. I've been personally waiting for 2 years for something to happen like this, and this is what happens when Canada, coast to coast, gathers in one area. It's nothing but smiles, good vibes, support, love, appreciation, resistance, and freedom thoughts, and why people we from a very, how do you say it in English? A very respectful country of ours. Like we've been known worldwide to be too sorry for stuff and this and that. Well, now we're tired of being sorry.
He's tired of being sorry.
Tired of being sorry. So people are. Wait a minute. The police chief said the people of Ottawa are angry, mad. That man didn't sound angry. He said people were donating food.
Yeah, baking food, making food and bringing it down. So if some grandmother bakes a pie and brings it down to the truckers, is she?
She's aiding and abetting domestic terrorism.
And if someone drives through Tim Hortons and gets some coffee and some crullers to bring down to the protests and everything, I guess they're domestic terrorists too,
yes.
Then, right?
Well, the police chief said they're going to get license plate numbers, check insurance. They're going to put pressure on these people. That's the actions of a totalitarian state that does not allow freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Who is leading Canada? Fidel Castro's son. And it's really starting to come out in full view. And I think his government's going to fall. I think the end of this is Trudeau falls.
Well, something's happening in Canada, obviously, because that pressure seems to have been working. Now, this is from CBC News. We've talked about the Coutts blockade at the U.S. border. There was a second one that started yesterday. But look at this headline, Rick. As Coutts' anti-mandate blockade continues, Alberta government plans to drop vaccine passports, Rick.
That's a coincidence, isn't it?
It's just a coincidence because without admitting it's bowing to truckers' demands, the Alberta government seems to be bowing to truckers' demands. I mean, now
we were going to drop the vaccine passport anyhow, but you guys showed up. It just happened to be on the same week.
Just a coincidence. Here's Alberta Premier Jason Kenney announcing the lifting of vaccine mandates for the province.
We are in a much better position to manage future waves of COVID thanks to the 90% of Alberta adults who have received at least a first dose of vaccine, plus more widespread immunity from prior infection, and on top of that, new antiviral medications. And that's why early next week, the COVID Cabinet Committee will approve a plan for the careful lifting of public health measures, beginning with the restriction exemption program.
Were those horns I were hearing honking outside of his office there, Rick?
And he didn't say how many Canadians got the second dose or the third dose.
No,
because they started to rethink after the first one. Because probably a lot of them got sick. They had a bad reaction to the first dose, and they didn't go back for the second dose. Plus, they were hearing the truth coming out over the past year. They heard the truth coming out about the experimental gene therapy drug. And people just said, I'm not going to do that. They never quote. They'll say 90% of the people got vaccinated.
But how vaccinated?
One dose.
Right.
Okay. And then there was a major drop off on the second dose. When you get to the third dose, it drops completely off the chart. They know they've lost. They've lost. They've tested the resistance. They found out how far they can push it. They now know the resistance has started. We're going to back up. We're going to retreat. We're going to let the people take a breather, and then we will regroup. I'm talking about the needle Nazis, the globalist needle Nazis, and they will regroup, and they'll come back at us another time with another method.
With either a worser virus or climate change lockdowns or something that's coming down the pike. In fact, I'm leaning more toward climate change lockdowns than anything else at this point. So, but that doesn't prevent yesterday's #1 loss leader on the stock market, Facebook, to keep making stupid decisions of getting rid of its customers.
That's right.
So, Facebook. This is New York Post reporting. Facebook removes Freedom Convoy page of truckers against vax mandates. Here's one business model I've never understood about Facebook. Let's get rid of our customers.
If they disagree with the Facebook owners like Mark Zuckerberg. And so let's show the next one. Zuckerberg falls out of the top 10 rich list after his personal net worth plunged $30 billion yesterday. Now, that's just his personal net worth.
Right.
The company, the value of Facebook went down $237 billion yesterday. His personal net worth dropped $30 billion. He's no longer in the top 10 richest people in the world.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But go back to the previous one. Has Zuckerberg figured out that this type of arrogant censorship of his customers may be contributing to the rapid decline of Facebook users?
Wow. Would you ever stop and think about that? Because they are hemorrhaging users every single day.
Doc, he changed the name of the company. He knows Facebook is going away.
Right.
Facebook is going to fade away. In a couple years from now, nobody will talk about Facebook. It'll just be gone. It'll still be there.
It'll kind of be like MySpace.
Yeah, like MySpace. Okay. It'll be there, but nobody's really going to be talking about it. That's why he changed the name to Metaverse, to Meta, because he knows Facebook's done. We're in an age that these tech corporations may have a lifespan of 10 years. They'll shoot up like a rocket and then come down just as fast. So we may see companies ascending, getting a lot of money and clout for a decade, maybe a decade and a half, and then just completely disappear. And the owners will have to reinvent themselves.
But they'll have a nice cash pile to do
They
it.
got a nice cash pile. But what I'm saying is, YouTube could disappear. Let me ask, personally, do you use let me do this again. Do you, Doc, use YouTube? I'm getting tongue-tied here. As often as you did 2 years ago?
Oh no, not at all.
Why?
Because there's other choices.
There you go.
Basically.
There you go.
So.
You will see YouTube disappear. When they started censoring people, millions of people said, I don't need this. They really don't need it. Their emotional connection to the brand was broken.
Right.
And they gradually are starting to move away from it. YouTube will disappear. It'll still be there, but hardly
in the background. And
yeah, it's not going to be something anybody goes to really seriously to look at anything. All of these tech companies will have the same lifespan, and they can't figure out. They're so arrogant that they can't believe that their arrogance is what's causing the decline of their companies. But that's okay. Let them disappear. CNN is imploding.
Yes.
Matter of fact, let's just, New York Post, Jake Tapper said Chris Cuomo blew up CNN after Zucker refused contract payout. So Zucker resigned as the president of CNN yesterday or day before.
Over a sexual relationship.
Yeah, he got outed for having an affair. Well, it was Chris Cuomo's lawyers who outed Zucker.
That's right.
So they're destroying themselves. Their audience has plunged 90% in the last year. They're imploding from the inside. They've had one sex scandal after another, and they just were purchased.
Yes.
And the new owner, I can tell you right now, is going to change CNN. The next one, now this is a CEO of CNN's new owner, calls network the leader in news to the left. And when I first saw that this morning, I thought, wow, you just came right out and said it. We're the leader in leftist news. I'm not so sure, Doc, that's what he said. I mean, it would be easy. I know a lot of talk show hosts today are really running with this story and pounding him and saying, look what he said, they're the leader of leftist news. I'm not sure that's what he said. As I read into it, this man is the CEO of Discovery.
Discovery Networks.
All right, and so Discovery, there's a big merger taking place as AT&T has sold
Warner Media, yes.
Yeah, Warner Media, Warner Brothers, which owned CNN, and all this is coming together now under the Discovery brand, which is owned by John Malone. Now, John Malone is a Trump supporter. He's a billionaire. And I think what this, and I forget his name.
David Zaslav.
Yes. I think what he was saying was that in their corporate portfolio, they have sports on the right of the ledger column and news on the left.
In other words, it's a loss.
Yes.
I get it now.
I think that's what he's saying. All right, I'm being super fair to him.
So you think it was more rather a financial observation rather than a philosophical or a political observation?
Because I'm going to tell you right now, John Malone is not a raving leftist.
No.
I've never met John Malone. I've been in rooms with John Malone many years ago when I was young in the cable television industry. John Malone was an executive at TCI in Denver, Colorado. And so when I would attend corporate trade shows and exhibits, Mr. Malone was always the featured speaker. I mean, he was the top dog of the cable television industry back in those days. And so I've heard the man speak many times. And when TCI was purchased by AT&T, Mr. Malone cashed out and started Liberty Media.
Right.
And he started buying stakes in cable television networks. He eventually became a billionaire. He wasn't a billionaire, when he was working at TCI, but he became a billionaire. He did it all by himself, okay? And he's a conservative. I don't know on every issue where he believes, but I'm just saying I know that he was a contributor to the Trump campaign. He wasn't backing Bernie Sanders. He wasn't backing Hillary Clinton. So he owns CNN.
Right.
I think the transition is later this year.
Right.
He hasn't officially taken ownership of it. But what he has said publicly so far is that he is going to take CNN back to its roots.
Yes.
Where it was a news channel. It just reported news. It didn't do any commentary. It just reported news. And that's where John Malone plans to take CNN. It can't fail. They're already a complete failure. They've lost 90% of their audience. Zucker made them rabid. They became foaming at the mouth maniacs for leftist politics, to the point that you couldn't watch it. If you weren't a leftist, you couldn't watch it. Only hardcore leftists would watch CNN to get more leftist dopamine. Nobody in their right mind outside of the leftist world would watch CNN
for news.
Just for news. Because you had to listen to the screaming and the yelling and the propaganda, just like MSNBC. So,
and you saw Rachel Maddow is stepping away.
She's gone too.
So
she's leaving too. They're all leaving. So what I'm saying is Zuckerberg, Facebook is failing. CNN has collapsed.
They're jumping ship at MSNBC.
Yes. Do you remember, Doc, about a year ago, I said the landscape of American media will be unrecognizable in the near future?
Well, I just didn't realize this was the near future at the time.
So it's happening. It's happening. There's a shift. There's a major shift taking place financially, politically, socially, inside the news world. And it's a great time for opportunity. What the leftists did to stifle dissent, to shut down free speech, to censor people, it's backfired on them. It is utterly backfired on them, and they've lost respect, they've lost clout, they've lost position, where people now see them as just raw Marxist ideologues who will tear up anybody who doesn't agree with them. And even moderates are moving away from it now. That's why you saw Youngkin win in Virginia. The soccer moms voted for Republican because they said, wait a minute, the Democrats are saying, if I get to a school board meeting, I'm a terrorist.
That's right.
The Democrats are saying, as a mom, as a dad, I don't have any say in the education of my children. People are hearing this now. And they're going, whoa, I didn't know that's what they believed. So the more far left the Democrats become, the the more they're going to lose elections, lose support, to the point that they too would disappear. The Democratic Party will disappear like Facebook and CNN.
And the only way they can ever win their argument on that side of the aisle
is to shut you down.
Is to shut you down and to take away your rights, take away your ability to be able to express your voice.
That's right. While we're on the topic of censorship, I'll show you one more political story. And this is very significant, what happened today. The Republican National Committee, this is the National Committee of the Republican Party.
Right.
It don't get any higher than this. Voted today to censor Liz Cheney and Congressman Kinzinger.
Yes.
For taking seats on the January 6th committee.
Right.
They said, you two are not Republicans.
Basically,
we're
yes.
stripping from you the label of Republican.
So, quote from this Fox News story here, it says the RNC took a rare step on Friday to censor 2 GOP lawmakers in the House of Representatives for their participation in a Democratic-dominated House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack, so-called attack, on the U.S. Capitol. In an overwhelming voice vote by committee members gathered for the general session of their winter meeting in Salt Lake City, the RNC rebuked Reps Liz Cheney of Wyoming and Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Now, the resolution also states the RNC will no longer support them as members of the Republican Party. So basically, they have blackballed them out of the GOP, right?
And I think Mr. Kinzinger has announced he's not running for re-election, and Liz Cheney is way behind in the campaign for re-election. She has an opponent who is raising a large amount of money and has gathered a lot of support in Wyoming, and it's doubtful that Liz Cheney, the daughter of Vice President Dick Cheney, will survive the Wyoming Republican primary.
So let me ask you this, Rick. Is this censor of Cheney and Kinzinger, both who are very opposed to Donald Trump,
yes,
is this a sign that the Trump juggernaut has taken over the Republican Party?
Mr. Trump owns the Republican Party. He owns it. It's his. It's the Trump Party. No doubt about it. If he comes out against you in a primary, you're probably going to lose. Yeah, that's where it's at right now. He's running the Republican Party. Now, what I don't like look, personally, I don't like the fact that the Republican Party censored Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. I don't like censorship. I don't want my opponents censored. I don't want anybody censored. I truly believe in free speech. I really do. If somebody out there doesn't like me, you have a right to not like me. It's okay.
And even talk about it.
You can talk, yeah, I don't care. I'm not going to try to shut down anybody. A lot of people try to shut me down, but I've never tried to shut down anybody else. And I personally don't think they should have censored them, but at the same time, I don't think Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger should have accepted Nancy Pelosi's invitation because she just destroyed your career.
Right.
Nancy Pelosi is the one who got rid of Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger.
But let's face it, that name Cheney carries a lot of meaning in the Republican Party. Still has that, that weight from Mr. Dick Cheney.
But not right now.
But so the pendulum has swung, hasn't it?
Yes, it's now a Trump party. It's not a Bush-Cheney party. It's a Trump party. And Liz Cheney should have just stayed off the committee, and Kissinger should have stayed off the committee, and they'd be running for re-election, and they'd have no trouble.
Do you think this is as significant a shift in the Republican Party like we saw from the late 60s, 70s that ended up birthing Ronald Reagan? I mean, is that on that par at this point? Because it was the big money Republicans in the 60s, early 70s. They owned the party.
Nelson Rockefeller.
Right, and it took a while, like for the Goldwaters to even have a voice that didn't even get echoes until the Reagan era.
Yes.
So it took a while for that full pendulum to swing.
Yes.
Do you think President Trump actually has more power right now with the Republicans as a kingmaker than he would ever as president?
That's an interesting question because he is absolutely the most influential Republican in the country right now. If he comes out against you, you're going to lose the primary.
And if he's for you,
you're most likely going to win the primary. Okay? It's a Trump party right now. And I think a lot of Republicans out there are getting that message so that if they don't like Donald Trump, they're just going to be quiet. And they're not going to come out publicly and say it.
So Donald Trump, a lifelong Democrat, becomes a Republican and takes over the Republican Party.
And chases out Dick Cheney's daughter. Yeah, interesting times that we're in. Hey, we're going to wrap it up for this Friday. Thank you for watching True News. We appreciate your support and your prayers and your financial giving. We are financed by the love gifts of our partners. And without you, we can't do any of this. So thank you very, very much. Those of you who can help us, we're very, very appreciative for whatever you can send. We'll be back here on Monday. A lot will happen over the weekend. I guarantee you there will be crazy news on Monday to talk about. Go to church this weekend. Do something positive. Find a Bible-believing church that you can go to and spend time worshiping the Lord. Maybe you can find a church that's having Holy Communion this weekend and participate in the Lord's Supper. As always, we invite you to watch New Zion. We have a digital church service. Large thousands of people all over the world watch New Zion every week, and you can have communion with us every week.
Yes.
And you can watch it on the True News website every Sunday. We'll see you on Monday. God bless. Bye.
God bless you.